Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling something I know a lot of people find confusing: dementia and Alzheimer's disease. It's like, what's the difference?
Yeah, they do get thrown around a lot, and sometimes it feels like they're, the same thing.
Right. And it's really important to know, what we're talking about, especially if you're, dealing with this personally or someone you love, is we've got all sorts of stuff here: medical pamphlets, articles on the latest treatments.
Oh, wow, that's interesting.
Yeah. So let's really break it down and empower you with knowledge.
Sounds good to me. Where should we start?
Okay. Let's just start with, the basics. Dementia. What is that exactly? It's not a disease, is it?
You're right. It's not a specific disease. It's more of an umbrella term. Think of it as like a collection of symptoms, like a syndrome,
Okay.
rather than one single disease.
So it's more like a description of, what's happening rather than a specific diagnosis.
Exactly, yeah. It's like saying someone has a fever. The fever itself isn't the illness, but it tells you that something's going on.
Oh, that makes sense. So where does Alzheimer's fit into all this?
So Alzheimer's disease is actually one of the things that can cause dementia.
Okay.
In fact, it's the most common cause.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, about 60 to 80% of cases.
So if you have Alzheimer's, you have dementia. But if you have dementia, you don't necessarily have Alzheimer's.
Exactly. That's a very important distinction.
Got it. Okay, so then what makes Alzheimer's unique? Like, what's going on in the brain?
Well, your sources mentioned these things called amyloid plaques and tau tangles.
Yeah, I've heard those terms before. Honestly, they sound a little bit like science fiction to me.
Yeah, kind of, right? Like something out of Star Trek.
Right.
But they're actually very real and play a big role in how Alzheimer's affects the brain. Imagine your brain as like a complex network
Okay.
of roads and highways, right? Allowing information to travel
Okay.
quickly and efficiently.
Yeah.
Now, imagine those roads getting clogged with debris and the traffic signals just going haywire.
Okay.
That's kind of what amyloid plaques and tau tangles do. They disrupt communication between brain cells, leading to, well, cell death.
Right.
And then eventually that's what causes the, cognitive symptoms we associate with dementia.
So it's like these plaques and tangles, they're like roadblocks and detours in the brain.
Yes, exactly.
And it's causing things to slow down and break down.
Yeah.
No wonder people have, memory problems, confusion, and all that.
Exactly. And unfortunately, this damage, it's progressive. So it gets worse over time.
That's scary. What causes these plaques and tangles to form in the first place? Is it environmental? Is it something we're doing?
Well, that's something researchers are still trying to figure out, but age is a big one.
Okay.
Most people with Alzheimer's are 65 or older,
Okay.
and genetics can play a role too,
So if your parents or grandparents had Alzheimer's, you're more likely to get it.
Yeah, that's one piece of the puzzle, but there's more to it than just genes. Like lifestyle factors, your diet, how much you exercise, even social interaction can all impact your risk.
Okay, so it's complicated. It's like nature and nurture kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it sounds like there's a lot we don't know, but what about treatments? Is there anything that can slow down or even reverse this damage?
Well, that's the million-dollar question. And while there's no cure yet, there has been some significant progress, both in managing the symptoms and even potentially slowing things down.
That's good. That's good to hear. What about these medications I keep hearing about, like donepezil and rivastigmine?
Yes. Those medications belong to a group called cholinesterase inhibitors. Basically, they boost levels of this brain chemical called acetylcholine,
Okay.
which is really important for memory and learning. It's like, giving your brain a little extra fuel to keep those signals firing.
So it's not a cure, but it can, help your brain work better for a while.
Exactly. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a wound. It doesn't actually fix the underlying problem, but can offer some relief.
Okay. And then there's also memantine, right?
Yes.
Does
Yeah.
that one work differently?
It does. Memantine regulates another brain chemical called glutamate, and that can become overactive in Alzheimer's and cause more damage.
So it's like a safety valve,
Exactly.
trying to keep things from, getting too out of control.
Right.
What about these new treatments I keep seeing everywhere?
Yeah.
The ones that actually target the amyloid plaques, are those just hype, or is there something to that?
Oh, now we're talking about the cutting edge of Alzheimer's research. Leqembi and Kisunla, two groundbreaking infusion therapies that are really making waves.
And it's not just medication, right? What about those healthy habits and lifestyle changes, like exercise, keeping your brain active? those can make a difference too, can't they?
Absolutely. You're spot on. Those lifestyle factors are so important. They can have a big impact on brain health, both preventing cognitive decline and supporting those already living with dementia.
So it's not all doom and gloom. Even with this, challenging disease, there are things we can do. But tell me more about these infusions, like Leqembi and Kisunla. Do they work the same way, or do they attack those amyloid plaques differently?
That's where it gets really interesting. They both target those amyloid plaques, but they do it in slightly different ways, kind of like specialized demolition crews, different strategies.
Ooh, I like that. So tell me more.
So Leqembi is like the proactive team. They're focusing on the plaques as they're forming, trying to prevent them from building up and causing more damage.
So it's like stopping those traffic jams before they even start. What about Kisunla? Does it take a different approach?
It does. Kisunla is more like the heavy-duty crew. They come in to tackle the more established plaques, the ones that have already built up, and it's like bringing in the big machinery to clear out those major roadblocks.
Wow. It's amazing how they're figuring out these targeted ways to fight this disease. It's like all new world of Alzheimer's treatment. But I got to ask, with any new treatment, especially something this powerful, what about side effects? Are there any red flags?
That's a great question. It's definitely something to discuss with your doctor. The sources do mention a potential side effect called ARI.
ARI?
It stands for amyloid-related imaging abnormalities.
Okay, that sounds a little intimidating. What does that even mean?
Think of it as the brain's response to the medication as it's working to clear out those plaques. It's like a bit of inflammation or swelling, like those demolition crews are working hard.
So it's not necessarily a bad thing, more like a sign that the treatment's actually doing something?
Yeah, that's one way to look at it. The most common type is called ARIAE, and it often doesn't cause any noticeable symptoms, and it usually goes away on its own.
Okay.
But there's another type, ARIH, which involves tiny spots of bleeding in the brain.
Bleeding in the brain, that sounds a little more serious.
It can be, but thankfully ARIAH is a lot less common, and usually it's just very small. We call them microhemorrhages.
So tiny spots, not like, a major bleed.
Exactly. And they often don't even cause any symptoms. They're usually picked up on routine brain scans.
Okay. That makes me feel a little bit better. But I'm assuming there are cases where it is more severe.
Yes, in rare instances, the bleeding can be more significant, and it can cause things like headaches, dizziness, even confusion. It's important to really talk to your doctor about your individual risk factors.
Okay, so it's weighing the benefits versus the risks.
Right.
I read that certain genes can make someone more likely to get ARI.
You're talking about the APOE gene. Certain versions of it have been linked to a higher risk of ARI.
So could someone get tested for that gene before starting treatment to see if they're more susceptible?
Yes, absolutely. Your doctor can order a genetic test to check for those specific APOE variations. And if they are present, it doesn't necessarily rule out treatment. But it's good information for your doctor to have.
It's crazy how genetics plays such a big role in all of this. This is all really helpful information, but I gotta admit, I'm still curious about the actual experience. Like going to an infusion center, what's that like? How long does it take? What should people expect?
I understand. It's one thing to talk about it, but it's another to actually picture yourself going through it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the sources, especially the info from Sage Infusion, they seem to have a very patient-centered approach. For Leqembi, infusions are given every 2 weeks, and each session is about an hour.
Okay, so you're not spending all day there.
Right. And for Kisunla, it's even less frequent. It's monthly, but the infusions might take a little longer.
Interesting. So it's like you trade off frequency for the length of the appointment.
Exactly. And your doctor will help you figure out the best schedule.
Okay, so you're hooked up to an IV, but what do you do during that time? Just sit there?
No, not at all. Sage Infusion, they really go the extra mile to make sure patients are comfortable. They have comfy chairs, Wi-Fi, even private rooms if you want to be alone.
Wow. That sounds way more chill than I was picturing.
Right. It's more like a spa than a hospital.
And they have a whole team of nurses and specialists who are there to, make sure you're doing okay.
Yes, exactly. Compassionate, personalized care.
That's really reassuring.
Definitely.
I'm sensing a theme here. From personalized treatment plans to a really welcoming infusion center, it seems like it's all about empowering the patient and making this whole experience a little less scary.
You got it. And it's important to remember that while we've been talking about Alzheimer's, that's just one piece of the dementia puzzle.
Right. There are other causes that we haven't even talked about.
Exactly. And, exploring those other types of dementia could be our next deep dive.
Ooh, I like that. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's go back to something you mentioned earlier, those lifestyle factors that can impact brain health. It seems like we've been focusing on like what to do after a diagnosis, but what about prevention? Like, can we actually do anything to, keep our brains healthy, maybe lower our chances of getting dementia in the first place?
I'm so glad you asked that. And the answer is yes. While there are no guarantees, we do know that certain lifestyle choices can make a big difference.
Okay, tell me everything. What can people do to be proactive?
Well, first and foremost, physical activity is key. It's not just about keeping your body in shape, it's about keeping your brain healthy too.
Okay.
Regular exercise, like aerobic exercise that gets your heart rate up, it improves blood flow to the brain, it actually stimulates the growth of new brain cells,
Wow.
and it can even help clear out those amyloid plaques we talked about earlier.
So get out there and move.
Yes, exactly. And it doesn't have to be anything crazy. Even moderate exercise, like brisk walking, swimming, dancing, can have a real impact.
That's good to hear. I'm not exactly a marathon runner.
The key is just to be consistent. Aim for like 30 minutes most days of the week.
Got it. Exercise is a must. What else can people do?
Well, mental stimulation is super important too.
Okay.
It's about challenging your brain, keeping it active.
So like crossword puzzles, Sudoku, that kind of thing.
Yeah, those are great. But there are tons of things you can do. Reading, learning a new language, playing brain games, even just engaging in like really stimulating conversations.
It's like cross-training for your brain,
Exactly.
working out different mental muscles.
The more diverse the activities, the better. Keep your brain flexible, adaptable, and don't forget about social engagement.
Oh, right. We're social creatures, right?
Exactly. We need connection. Staying socially active can actually lower stress, improve your mood, and even boost your cognitive function.
Makes sense. So make time for friends and family, join a club, whatever it takes to stay connected.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so exercise, mental workouts, social time. What about diet? Can we eat our way to a healthier brain?
The sources actually talk quite a bit about the importance of nutrition for brain health, and they specifically mention the Mediterranean diet as being really beneficial.
Ooh, the Mediterranean diet. Olive oil, fish, all that good stuff.
Yes, it's packed with antioxidants, healthy fats, omega-3 fatty acids. All those things have been shown to support brain function, and they might even play a role in protecting against cognitive decline.
So ditch the processed foods and load up on those brain-boosting nutrients.
Exactly. And don't forget about staying hydrated. Water is essential for everything, including your brain.
Right. Hydrate those brains. This has been amazing. I feel like we've learned so much. We've really broken down the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's disease. We've looked at the newest treatments, and we've even talked about some really practical steps to protect our brain health.
I agree. I hope this deep dive has given our listener the knowledge and the motivation to really take charge of their brain health.
It's about staying informed, staying proactive, and staying hopeful. And remember, knowledge is power. The more you understand about this stuff, the better prepared you'll be to handle whatever comes your way, whether for yourself or a loved one.
Very well said. And if you or someone you know is going through any cognitive changes, please don't hesitate to reach out for help. Early diagnosis is so important.
That's a really good reminder. Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive.
It's been a pleasure diving in with you.
Always a good time. Until next time, keep those brains buzzing and keep those questions coming.
The learning never stops.
Exactly. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.